Marcus Jackson never imagined that a single night could unravel an empire, or that he would have to face its darkest truths himself. Yet here he was, stepping into the polished lobby of Avalon Elite Hotels, a gleaming crown jewel of his business empire, only to feel more invisible than ever before. The grandeur of the space, with its soaring ceilings, glistening marble floors, and ambient, artful lighting, was designed to evoke power and prestige. But tonight it was marred by an undercurrent of disdain and neglect that stung Marcus to the core. Marcus, a determined and charismatic African-American CEO known for his visionary leadership and unwavering commitment to excellence, had orchestrated this visit for a very specific reason. Under the cover of anonymity, he wanted to experience the frontline reality of his hotel chain, the very place where his reputation for world-class hospitality was at stake. Dressed in a smart, understated blazer and dark slacks, he walked into the reception area with the quiet confidence of a man who had built his fortune from nothing but a dream and relentless perseverance. At the sleek, curved reception desk, Marcus was met with a scene that made his blood boil. There, behind the gleaming counter, stood two employees whose cold demeanor and dismissive gestures immediately betrayed a culture of indifference. On the left was Amanda Brooks, a young Caucasian receptionist with icy blue eyes and an expression that suggested he wasn't worth her time. Her arms were tightly folded across her chest, and her lips were curled in a contemptuous smirk, as if Marcus's presence was an unwelcome intrusion into her meticulously curated routine. To the right, a middle-aged man in a crisp suit, Tyler Reynolds, the hotel's operations manager, hovered uncertainly, one hand raised in a tentative gesture that might have been intended as an apology or a feeble attempt at mediation. His eyes, however, darted nervously between Amanda and Marcus, betraying his internal conflict. "Good evening," Marcus said politely, yet his tone carried an edge of authority that could not be ignored. "I have a reservation under Marcus Jackson." Amanda barely glanced at him, her eyes never meeting his. "Reservation? I don't see any reservation under that name," she replied in a flat, condescending tone, her voice dripping with indifference. Marcus's calm exterior did not mask the simmering fury inside him. He reached for his phone and discreetly pulled up his booking confirmation, a digital testament to his status and legitimacy. Holding the phone out so that Amanda could see, he repeated, "Here's my confirmation. It's clearly in your system." For a moment, silence reigned as Amanda's eyes flickered over the screen, then back to her phone. Tyler shifted his weight, his brow creasing in a mixture of anxiety and reluctant sympathy. But still, no acknowledgement came from either of them. "It appears there's been a mistake," Amanda finally said, her tone dismissive and cold, as if Marcus were nothing more than an inconvenience. "Perhaps you booked the wrong location." That was the final straw. Marcus's heart pounded, not just with anger, but with the realization that this wasn't a mere technical glitch. It was an act of deliberate exclusion, a statement that he, the very man who had built Avalon Elite from the ground up, was no longer welcome in his own empire. In that charged moment, something in him snapped, and he knew that the facet of impeccable service was rotten to its core. Marcus's eyes narrowed. "Mistake?" he asked slowly, his voice steady yet edged with steel. "Then explain why my reservation, which is in your system, has been deleted entirely." He turned his phone around, displaying the detailed log that verified his booking. The evidence was irrefutable. His reservation had been manually removed, and the log showed that it was Amanda who had executed the deletion. The receptionist's smirk faltered for a split second before she regained her composure. But Tyler's unease was evident. He opened his mouth to speak, but Marcus raised a hand to silence him. "I'm not here to debate policy," he said. "I'm here to experience the truth of what's happening in my hotel. And tonight you've shown me that truth in the form of disrespect." Amanda's eyes finally met his, but instead of remorse, they flashed with defiance. "Maybe you should leave," she said in a tone that was as cold as the polished marble underfoot. Tyler's face paled as he mumbled something about following proper protocols, But Marcus could see that neither of them had the strength or the will to stand up for what was right. It was then that Marcus made a decision. He would not allow himself to be treated as invisible in the very place that bore his name. Instead, he would turn this humiliation into a catalyst for change, a reckoning for those who dared to trample on dignity in his empire. Without missing a beat, Marcus stepped away from the reception desk and strode confidently toward the private office at the end of the corridor, a space he had designed himself where decisions that shaped the company were made. Inside, waiting in a plush modern office lined with glass walls and abstract art, sat Robert Coleman, the newly appointed CEO's mentor and a respected American business magnate. Robert's face, etched with decades of hard-won wisdom, registered a mixture of surprise and concern as Marcus recounted the incident. "They erased my reservation," Marcus said, his voice measured but burning with quiet fury. "It wasn't a mistake. It was a message that says no one matters here but those who can't afford to be ignored." Robert leaned back, his eyes darkening. "Marcus, this isn't just about one reservation. It's about a culture of indifference and entitlement that has infiltrated even the most prestigious establishments. We built this company on the principles of respect, innovation, and integrity. If those values are being undermined at the very front line, then something must change." And so, in that moment, a plan was born, a plan to not only rectify this injustice, but to expose a rot that extended far beyond a single act of callous disregard. Marcus resolved to go undercover. Over the next several weeks, he would immerse himself in the day-to-day operations of Avalon Elite Hotels, experiencing firsthand the treatment of employees at every level. From the front desk to the housekeeping staff, he would gather evidence, document abuses, and ultimately hold accountable those who betrayed the company's core values. The following morning, under the guise of an unassuming guest, Marcus stepped into the hotel again. This time, he donned a simple outfit, a plain polo and khakis, stripping away the trappings of his power to blend into the background. He moved among the corridors with deliberate anonymity, his eyes and ears attuned to every whispered complaint and every act of subtle cruelty. And what he found was disheartening. From the bustling corridors to the opulent banquet halls, there was a pervasive sense of neglect and disrespect. Housekeepers spoke in hushed tones of managers who dismissed their concerns, of guests whose issues were ignored, and of a corporate culture that valued profit over people. The treatment of the staff, especially those from marginalized backgrounds, was not just a series of isolated incidents. It was systemic. One evening, as Marcus walked through the back corridors, he encountered a young man named Ethan Carter, a maintenance worker with tired eyes and calloused hands. Ethan recounted with a quiet bitterness how his supervisor, a man named Scott Franklin, had repeatedly belittled him for asking simple questions about safety protocols. "He always says, 'You're not smart enough to know how things work here,'" Ethan whispered, his voice trembling. "I work hard every day, but no matter what I do, I'm just invisible." Marcus listened intently, his resolve hardening with every story. He documented these testimonies with his discreet recorder, aware that these voices, long silenced by fear, were the very heartbeat of his empire. If these abuses continued unchecked, the promise of Avalon Elite Hotels would be nothing more than a hollow facade. But it wasn't just the treatment of the staff that alarmed him. In his covert investigations, Marcus discovered a tangled web of favoritism and corruption that reached deep into the executive offices. He learned that Amanda Brooks, the receptionist who had humiliated him, was not acting alone. Tyler Reynolds, the so-called operations manager, was complicit in a broader scheme of manipulating guest experiences to favor high-paying clients, while disregarding the welfare of the employees who maintained the hotel standards. Even more shockingly, he uncovered evidence that certain upper-level executives had been diverting funds meant for employee development into secret personal accounts. The final blow came when Marcus received an anonymous tip, an email containing security footage of a heated confrontation in the hotel's conference room. In the video, a well-known sales director, Veronica Mitchell, was seen berating a janitorial staff member in front of a group of executives. Her words were harsh and dehumanizing. "You're nothing but a scum who cleans toilets. Don't you ever talk back to me." The footage was accompanied by timestamps and detailed logs, leaving no room for doubt that this was yet another instance of systemic abuse. Armed with dynamic evidence, Marcus knew that it was time to act. The plan was audacious and fraught with risk. He would gather all the proof, compile detailed reports, and confront the very leadership that had allowed such toxic behavior to flourish. More than that, he would do it in a way that could not be ignored, by exposing the truth in a live board meeting where every senior executive would be forced to witness the reality of their company's corruption. The day of reckoning arrived sooner than expected. Marcus, no longer in his undercover guise, stood in a packed boardroom filled with bewildered executives and board members. At the head of the table sat Robert Coleman, whose eyes betrayed a mixture of pride and sorrow as he watched Marcus prepare to speak. The room was heavy with anticipation, every attendee aware that something monumental was about to unfold. "Good morning," Marcus began, his voice steady and clear. "Today I stand before you not as your CEO, but as someone who has experienced every level of this company, from the shining surface of our lobby to the hidden corners where our real work happens." He paused, letting the gravity of his words settle over the room. "For too long, the voices of our employees have been drowned out by indifference and neglect. I have gathered evidence of a systemic culture of abuse that has not only harmed individuals, but undermined the very foundation of Avalon Elite Hotels." As Marcus began to present the meticulously gathered evidence, a series of video clips, audio recordings, and documented testimonies, the atmosphere in the boardroom shifted. One by one, the faces of the executives transformed from confident complacency to shock and dismay. The evidence was irrefutable. Amanda's deliberate deletion of his reservation, Tyler's silent complicity, and the multiple instances of harassment and abuse by figures like Scott Franklin and Veronica Mitchell were laid bare for all to see. When the final clip played, a security camera recording of Veronica Mitchell berating a janitorial worker with cruel words and even harsher physical gestures, the room fell into a stunned silence. The video captured not only the cruelty, but the calculated nature of the abuse. Veronica's voice, as cold as ice, declared, "You're nothing but a scum who cleans toilets. Don't you ever talk back to me." The phrase echoed around the room, a stark reminder of the dehumanizing behavior that had become all too common. A murmur rippled through the assembled executives. Some looked away, unwilling to confront the truth. Others scribbled notes furiously, their expressions a mix of disbelief and regret. In that charged moment, Marcus's message was clear. Accountability was not optional. It was mandatory. "I did not come here to seek vengeance," Marcus continued, his eyes locking onto each executive in turn. "I came here to reclaim the values that this company was built upon: integrity, respect, and the belief that every individual, regardless of their position, deserves to be treated with dignity." His words resonated with the room, a powerful call to action that could no longer be ignored. As the presentation concluded, the boardroom erupted into a flurry of discussions, accusations, and eventually decisive action. Robert Coleman stood up, his voice trembling with emotion as he addressed the room. "Today, we have seen the truth of what has been allowed to happen in our company. This is not merely about isolated incidents. It is a betrayal of everything we stand for. Effective immediately, I am initiating a full-scale investigation into these abuses. The individuals responsible for this toxic culture will be held accountable, and we will take every measure necessary to restore the integrity of Avalon Elite Hotels." In the days that followed, the fallout was swift and far-reaching. Amanda Brooks, Tyler Reynolds, Scott Franklin, and Veronica Mitchell were all terminated from their positions. The board of directors, appalled by the systemic corruption and abuse, called for an immediate overhaul of the company's policies and a comprehensive review of its culture. Marcus's bold actions, though risky and unconventional, sparked a profound transformation that rippled throughout the organization. Employees at every level, from the housekeeping staff to senior management, began to speak out. The once hidden voices of those who had long suffered in silence found a platform to demand change. Internal surveys revealed a dramatic shift in morale as the new leadership, led by Marcus, prioritized transparency, accountability, and genuine care for every member of the team. The changes were not instantaneous, and there were many challenges along the way, but the seeds of transformation had been sown. In one particularly moving moment during a company-wide town hall meeting, a maintenance worker named Carlos, who had once been so fearful of retaliation that he could barely speak, stood up and shared his story. With tears in his eyes, he recounted how he had been berated and humiliated by a manager for simple mistakes, how his hard work had been dismissed time and time again. His voice, once soft and timid, now rang out with power as he declared, "I am not invisible anymore. I am seen, I am heard, and I deserve respect." His words were met with thunderous applause, a testament to the collective yearning for justice that had long simmered beneath the surface. Marcus watched the scene with a deep sense of fulfillment. He had always believed that true leadership was not about commanding from the top, but about walking among the people, understanding their struggles, and fighting for their rights. His decision to go undercover, to experience the harsh realities of his own empire, had transformed not only his perspective, but the entire culture of Avalon Elite Hotels. It was a lesson in humility, resilience, and the enduring power of empathy. Over the following months, the company embarked on a comprehensive journey of reform. New policies were enacted to ensure that every employee, regardless of their role, was treated with dignity and fairness. Training programs were revamped to emphasize the importance of respect and collaboration, and a robust system was put in place to address grievances promptly and effectively. Marcus himself made it a point to interact with employees on the ground level, to listen to their concerns, and to ensure that their voices were not only heard but acted upon. The transformation was profound. Avalon Elite Hotels, once a symbol of luxury tainted by a culture of indifference, began to shine with a renewed sense of purpose. Employee satisfaction soared, guest feedback became overwhelmingly positive, and the company's reputation for excellence was restored. But perhaps the most lasting change was the way people saw themselves within the organization. No longer were they mere cogs in a profit-driven machine. They were valued, respected, and integral to the company's success. For Marcus Jackson, the journey was as much personal as it was professional. The experience taught him that leadership required constant vigilance and a willingness to confront uncomfortable truths. It reaffirmed his belief that the true measure of success was not in the number of accolades or the size of the empire, but in the lives transformed and the injustices rectified. His decision to expose the deep-seated corruption and to stand up for those who had been silenced had come at great personal cost, but it had also forged a legacy of integrity and compassion that would endure long after the scandals faded from the headlines. In the months leading up to his formal announcement as the new CEO, a role he assumed with humility and a steadfast commitment to change, Marcus continued to champion the rights of every employee. He implemented regular feedback sessions, introduced mentorship programs for junior staff, and even established an anonymous reporting hotline to ensure that abuses could be swiftly addressed. His open-door policy became a symbol of the new era at Avalon Elite Hotels, one where every individual was seen, heard, and valued. The final defining moment came during a celebratory gala held to mark the company's rebirth. As the event unfolded in a grand ballroom adorned with elegant decor and shimmering lights, Marcus took to the stage. Standing before a sea of faces, employees, board members, industry leaders, and even former critics, he spoke with a measured, heartfelt tone. Today, he began, we celebrate not just the success of our company, but the strength and resilience of every individual who has contributed to our journey. We have faced our darkest moments and emerged stronger, united by a shared commitment to justice and dignity. Let this be a reminder that when we stand together, no injustice is too great to overcome. The applause that followed was deafening, a powerful affirmation that the transformation was complete. Marcus's journey from humiliation to triumph had become a beacon of hope for countless others, a vivid reminder that true change begins when we dare to confront the truth and fight for what is right. And so, the story of Avalon Elite Hotels evolved from one of cold luxury and hidden corruption to a tale of rebirth, redemption, and the unyielding power of empathy. Marcus Jackson's legacy was no longer defined solely by his success in business, but by his unwavering commitment to the people who had helped build that success. In exposing the rot at the core of his empire, he had not only reclaimed the dignity of those who had been oppressed, but he had also ignited a movement, one that promised to reshape the future of corporate America. This is the story of a CEO who dared to see what others ignored, of a man who turned personal humiliation into a catalyst for systemic change, and of a company that, through adversity, rediscovered its soul. It is a tale that reminds us all, no matter how high we rise, we must never forget the ground on which we stand, for it is there that true integrity is forged.